Power can be worn like $1,000 suit, sharp, loud, and demanding attention. For the titan of industry Sterling Vance, it was the only kind he understood. But sometimes power is quiet, worn like a simple waitress's uniform, observing the world from the shadows. On one fateful evening, these two worlds collided. He unleashed his fury on a server over a spilled glass of wine, a brutal display to put a nobody in her place. He had no idea that this quiet waitress held a secret that would not only cost him his dignity, but shatter the very foundations of his empire. This is the story of how a single act of arrogance ignited an epic downfall. The Gilded Sparrow was not merely a restaurant, it was a testament to old New York money, a sanctuary carved out of mahogany and hushed ambition. The air itself seemed curated thick with the scent of beeswax, aged leather, and the subtle tantalizing aromas wafting from a kitchen that operated with the precision of a Swiss watchmaker. Every piece of silverware was polished to a mirror shine, every crystal glass was free of the slightest smudge, and every member of the staff moved with a rehearsed, almost silent grace. It was a place where deals were sealed with a handshake over a bottle of 1982 Chateau Margaux, and reputations were built or broken between the appetizer and the main course. Into this meticulously controlled environment, Serafina Ross, known to her colleagues simply as Sarah, was an anomaly. For the past 3 weeks, she had been learning the intricate dance of a high-end waitress. She wasn't the most experienced, but she was by far the most observant. She saw the nervous tick of the young banker in corner booth, Seven trying to impress his clients the way the formidable matriarch at table 3 subtly controlled her family's conversation with the slightest narrowing of her eyes, and the lonely widower at the bar who ordered the same single malt scotch every night, nursing it as if it held the ghost of a shared memory. Sarah learned the menu until she could recite the origin of every ingredient. She learned the wine list, understanding the subtle difference between a Bordeaux from the left bank versus the right. Most importantly, she learned to be invisible a phantom in a crisp black uniform there, to anticipate a need before it was spoken, to fill a glass, without interrupting a sentence, to be a seamless part of the restaurant's perfect machinery. Her colleagues, most of whom had been working there for decades, were initially wary of the newcomer. She was quiet, diligent, and had a strange calmness about her that was unsettling in the high-pressure environment. She never complained about difficult customers or long hours. She just watched, learned, and absorbed everything. Tonight, a palpable tension hummed beneath the restaurant's usual quiet dignity. Mr. Peterson, the restaurant's manager for 25 years, scurried between tables, his brow perpetually damp with sweat. The Gilded Sparrow had recently been sold. The previous owners, the Devancourt family, had been forced to part with their legacy after a series of financial misfortunes. The new owner was an enigma, a name whispered, with a mixture of fear and curiosity, Nathaniel Harrington. No one had met him. All they knew was that he was a titan of a different sort. New money, a portfolio that spanned from tech startups to sustainable energy, and a reputation for being both brilliant and unconventional. The staff feared a culling, a modernizing sweep that would render their decades of traditional service obsolete. Sarah, however, felt a different kind of pressure. Her purpose here was deeper than just earning a paycheck. She felt the weight of every interaction, every cleared plate, every polite smile. At 8 o'clock, the heavy oak doors swung open, and Sterling Vance made his entrance. He didn't just walk into a room, he conquered it. Tall, impeccably dressed in a custom-tailored suit that probably cost more than Syrah's car. He had a face that belonged on the cover of a business magazine. Sharp, jaw-piercing grey eyes, and an expression of supreme, unshakable confidence. He radiated an aura of impatient power that made people instinctively step out of his way. On his arm was Bianca, a woman who seemed molded from the same expensive clay, her dress shimmering her laughter, sharp and artificial. "Mr." Peterson practically materialized at Sterling's side, his posture bowing with deference. "Mr. Vance, a pleasure. Your usual table is ready, of course. It had better be." Peterson Sterling said, his voice a low baritone that cut through the ambient chatter. He scanned the room with a critical eye, as if appraising its assets and finding them wanting. "And I want the 95 Lafitte. Make sure it's been decanted for exactly 1 hour. Not 59 minutes, not 61. I sent a reminder this afternoon. Did you get it?" "Yes, of course, Mr. Vance." Immediately Peterson stammered, already snapping his fingers at a passing sommelier. Sarah was assigned to their section. A senior waiter, Thomas gave her a look of pity. "Good luck," he muttered under his breath. He once sent back a steak because he claimed he could hear the cow's regret. And he wasn't joking. Sarah simply nodded, her expression unreadable. She approached the table, her notepad in hand. "Good evening. My name is Sarah, and I will be your server tonight. May I start you with some water?" Sterling didn't even look at her. He was busy scrolling through something on his phone, his thumb moving with aggressive speed. Bianca, however, gave Sarah a slow, dismissive once-over, her eyes cataloguing the simple uniform, the plain but neat bun of her hair, and the absence of expensive jewelry. The assessment ended with a faint, condescending smirk. "We'll have sparkling, San Pellegrino, with lemon, not lime, and the slices must be thin. Last time they were wedges." "I don't want wedges," Bianca said, her tone implying that this was a common and exhausting failure of the serving class. Of course, Sarah replied, her voice even. She made the note and retreated, feeling the weight of their dismissive energy like a physical cloak. She returned with the water, served it precisely as requested, and waited. Sterling was still engrossed in his phone. "Are you ready to order, or would you like a few more moments?" she asked politely. Sterling finally looked up from his phone, and his grey eyes fixed on her for the first time. It was not a look of acknowledgement, but of annoyance, as if a piece of furniture had just spoken. "Are we ready, Bianca?" he asked, not breaking his gaze from Sarah. "I'll have the seared scallops to start, and then the Dover sole," Bianca announced. "And for you, sir?" Sarah asked, turning her attention to Sterling. He held her gaze for a beat too long, a subtle power play. "I will have the Wagyu tartare. And for my main, the ribeye. It is to be cooked medium rare. But I mean a true medium rare. A warm red center. If I see even a hint of pink, pushing towards medium, or if it's cool in the middle, it's going back. Is that understood?" "Perfectly," Sir Sarah said. "A warm red center." She repeated the order back to them flawlessly, her memory sharp. As she turned to leave, Sterling's voice stopped her. "And you," he said, his voice laced with a cold authority. "Try to keep up. This is not a diner. We're on a schedule." Sarah paused, her back still to him. She took a quiet breath, composing herself against the sting of his rudeness. She turned her head slightly, meeting his gaze over her shoulder. "Your satisfaction is my priority, sir," she said, her voice betraying no emotion. She then walked away, her steps measured and deliberate, leaving a wake of arrogant silence behind her. She could feel his eyes on her back, cold and appraising, utterly unaware that the woman he saw as a mere functionary, a temporary obstacle in his evening, was observing him with an intensity and purpose he could never possibly comprehend. The storm was gathering, and a single bottle of red wine was about to become its catalyst. The first course proceeded with a tense, unspoken precision. Sarah delivered the scallops and the tartare, placing them on the table with the delicate care of a bomb disposal expert. Sterling inspected his dish, prodding the raw meat with his fork, as if searching for a flaw. Finding none, he gave a curt, dissatisfied nod and began to eat. Bianca, for her part, regaled Sterling with stories of corporate takeovers and office politics, her voice a constant high-pitched hum in the otherwise serene atmosphere. Sarah moved around them like a ghost, refilling water glasses, clearing plates, always silent, always efficient. The sommelier, a nervous man named Jean-Luc, approached with the 1995 Chateau Lafite Rothschild. He presented the bottle to Sterling with the reverence of a priest presenting a holy relic. The 1995 Mr. Vance. Decanted for precisely 1 hour as you requested. Sterling waved a dismissive hand, not even looking at the label. Just pour it. Jean-Luc's hands trembled slightly as he poured a small amount into Sterling's glass. Sterling lifted it, not to savor the aroma, but to inspect the color against the candlelight with the cold eye of a diamond appraiser. He swirled it once aggressively, then took a sip. He didn't swallow immediately, letting the wine sit on his palate, while his face hardened into a mask of deep displeasure. "Is this a joke?" he asked, his voice dangerously low. Jean-Luc paled. "Sir, is there a problem?" "A problem," Sterling echoed, a cruel smile touching his lips. "This wine is cool. It's not cellar temperature. It's refrigerator temperature. Did you chill it? Do you have any idea what over-chilling does to the tannins in a first-growth Bordeaux? It seizes them up, strangles the bouquet. This is an $8,400 bottle of wine, and you've treated it like a cheap rosé. Get it away from me." "My deepest apologies." Mr. Vance, Jean-Luc, stammered, his face ashen. He quickly retreated with the bottle, and decanter looking utterly defeated. Bianca placed a hand on Sterling's arm. "Darling, don't let them ruin our evening. They're just incompetent." "It's the principle of the thing," Sterling muttered, his eyes scanning the room for Mr. Peterson. "It's a lack of respect. For the wine, for the customer, for the entire institution of fine dining." Sarah, standing by her service station, a dozen feet away, had heard every word. She felt a knot of anger tighten in her stomach. It wasn't just the arrogance. It was the casual cruelty, the way he wielded his knowledge not for appreciation, but as a weapon to belittle and humiliate. The main courses were ready. Sarah picked up the 2 heavy plates, her focus absolute. She approached the table, just as Mr. Peterson arrived, wringing his hands. "Mr. Vance, I cannot apologize enough for the error with the wine. We are sourcing another bottle from our reserve cellar immediately. There will be no charge, of course." Sterling waved him away with contempt. "Just get it right this time." Sarah stepped forward to place Bianca's Dover sole before her. Then she turned to place the ribeye in front of Sterling, and in that precise, fateful moment, a busboy rushing from the kitchen with a heavy tray stumbled. To avoid a full-on collision, he lurched to his left, bumping hard into Sarah's arm, just as she was setting the plate down. It was a moment of horrifying slow motion. The heavy ceramic plate tilted. The perfectly cooked medium-rare ribeye, resting in a rich Bordelaise sauce, slid. It wasn't a catastrophic spill, not a full plate on his lap. It was worse. A single thick, dark red rivulet of sauce cascaded from the edge of the plate landing, directly onto the crisp white cuff of Sterling Vance's immaculate, custom-made shirt. A collective gasp seemed to be sucked from the air around the table. The busboy froze his face, a mask of pure terror. Mr. Peterson looked as if he might faint. For a heartbeat there was absolute silence. Sterling Vance looked down at the crimson stain spreading slowly across the starched fabric of his cuff. He didn't move. He simply stared at it, his jaw tightening, until the muscle bulged. Then, very slowly, he lifted his gaze from his ruined shirt and fixed it on Sarah. The look in his eyes was not just anger, it was pure, unadulterated venom. "You," he began, his voice a whisper that was somehow louder than a shout. "You clumsy, incompetent fool." Sarah stood frozen, the now empty plate still in her hand. "Sir, I am so sorry." It was an axi, "Do not speak to me," he snarled, cutting her off. He rose slowly to his feet, his full height towering over her. Every eye in the restaurant was now on them, conversations dying in mid-sentence. "Do you have any idea what you've just done? This shirt is Sea Island cotton. It costs more than you make in a week. But it's not about the money. It's about the sheer, breathtaking ineptitude." He held up his stained cuff for all to see. This is what happens when standards are allowed to slip, when they hire people off the street with no grace, no training, no sense of their surroundings. You are a liability in a place like this. Sarah's face was pale, but her eyes held a spark of defiance. "Sir, it was an accident." "The busboy, I don't care about the busboy," Sterling roared, his voice now echoing through the silent dining room. He pointed a trembling finger at her face. "I care about the person serving my table. You are a disgrace to this establishment. Peterson," he bellowed, turning his fury on the manager, who was already rushing forward with a cloth and a bottle of club soda. "Get her away from my table. I don't want to look at her for another second. She is fired. Do you understand me, fired? I want her gone. Now." Bianca watched the scene with a smug, satisfied smile, as if this was precisely the entertainment she had been hoping for. The young busboy had already vanished, likely hiding in the kitchen, convinced his career was over. Mr. Peterson looked from Sterling's furious face to Sarah's calm, yet strained expression. He was trapped. To defy a customer like Sterling Vance was professional suicide. "Miss," he said to Sarah, his voice pleading, "please, just go to the back." Sarah didn't move. She looked directly at Sterling, her voice quiet, but clear, cutting through the tension. "So your shirt can be cleaned. Your behavior, however, has left a permanent stain on this restaurant tonight." The audacity of her statement hung in the air, stunning everyone into silence. Sterling's face, already red with anger, darkened to a deep purple. He took a step closer to her, his fists clenched at his sides. "You insolent little... Who in the hell do you think you are?" He seethed, his voice dropping back to a menacing hiss. "You are nothing. A nameless face serving me food. You exist in my world for the next 90 minutes, and then you disappear. You have no right to speak to me, let alone pass judgment on me." He turned back to Peterson. "I am not asking you, Peterson. I am telling you. Fire her, or I will make it my personal mission to destroy this restaurant. I will write reviews, I will speak to my contacts, and I will ensure that by this time next year, this place is a boarded-up relic. Is that clear?" The threat was not idle. Everyone knew the power Sterling Vance wielded in the city. Mr. Peterson, his face slick with sweat, finally broke. He looked at Sarah, his eyes filled with a mixture of pity and desperation. "Sarah, please just go. Clock out. We'll talk tomorrow." It was a dismissal, a capitulation. Sterling Vance had won. He smirked, a look of triumphant cruelty on his face as he watched Sarah. He expected her to scurry away in tears, broken and humiliated. But she didn't. She simply held his gaze for a long moment, a silent promise passing in that look. Then, with a quiet dignity that was more powerful than his rage, she placed the plate she was still holding onto her service tray, turned and walked toward the kitchen, her back straight, her steps unhurried. She did not look defeated. She looked like a queen in exile, temporarily relinquishing her throne, but with every intention of returning to reclaim it. The kitchen doors swung shut behind Sarah, muffling the charged silence of the dining room. Inside, the usual controlled chaos of clanging pans and shouted orders had ground to a halt. The kitchen staff, from the executive chef to the dishwashers, had heard Sterling's tirade. They looked at Sarah with a mixture of awe and pity. The young busboy who had caused the incident, a teenager named Leo, was huddled in a corner, his face buried in his hands. Sarah walked over to him and placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. He flinched, expecting a reprimand. "It wasn't your fault, Leo," she said, her voice soft but firm. "Accidents happen. What happened out there was not about a spilled sauce." Leo looked up, his eyes wide with disbelief and gratitude. "But he said you were fired. Because of me." "Mr. Vance does not have the authority to fire me," she stated simply, a statement of such quiet confidence that it momentarily silenced the entire kitchen. She patted Leo's shoulder once more. "Now pull yourself together. We have a service to finish." She untied her apron, folded it neatly, and placed it on a clean counter. Chef Antoine, a burly man with a fiery reputation, approached her, wiping his hands on his apron. "Mademoiselle Sarah," he said, his French accent thick with concern. "That man is a pig. What Peterson did, unforgivable. Do not worry. You are a good worker. I will speak to him." "Thank you," Chef Sarah replied, giving him a small, appreciative smile. "But I think it's best if I handle this myself." She walked to the small, windowless staff locker room at the back. The adrenaline from the confrontation began to fade, replaced by a cold, clear sense of purpose. She wasn't just angry or humiliated. She was disappointed. She had spent the last 3 weeks observing the soul of the Gilded Sparrow, and tonight she had seen a rot at its core, a culture of fear that allowed the wealthy and powerful to act without consequence, and a management that would sacrifice its own staff to appease a bully. Her husband, Nate, had warned her this might happen. When they had acquired the restaurant, it was Sarah's idea to work there, incognito. "I can't fix a place if I don't know what's truly broken," she had argued. "Financial reports and customer surveys don't tell you about the culture, Nate. They don't show you the fear in a busboy's eyes, or the manager's willingness to crumble." He had been hesitant, worried for her, but ultimately he had trusted her judgment, as he always did. She pulled out her phone and stepped into the alley behind the restaurant. The city's cacophony, a stark contrast to the stifled atmosphere inside. The phone rang twice before he picked up. "Hey, you." Nate's voice was warm, a familiar comfort. "How's the front line? Still enjoying your secret mission?" "You could say it's been an eventful evening," Sarah said, a wry tone in her voice. She quickly recounted the entire episode, from Sterling Vance's entrance and his complaint about the wine to the spilled sauce and his demand for her termination. She didn't embellish or dramatize. She reported it with the calm, factual clarity of an intelligence officer debriefing her commander. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. When Nate finally spoke, his voice had lost its earlier warmth, replaced by a steely edge. "What's his name again?" "Sterling Vance, CEO of Vance Capital Acquisitions." Another pause. "I know him." Nate said, his voice flat. "We've crossed paths on a few deals. He's a shark. Thinks of people as assets or liabilities, nothing in between. And Peterson just let him fire you." "He told me to clock out and go home," Sarah confirmed. He was terrified. "Nate, Vance threatened to ruin the restaurant." "He threatened our restaurant," Nate corrected her, the possessive pronoun sharp and deliberate. "And he humiliated my wife." Sarah could picture him perfectly sitting in his study, his relaxed posture gone. his mind already working, connecting dots, formulating a strategy. He was a builder, not a destroyer like Vance, but when someone threatened what he loved, his response was swift and decisive. "So what's the next move?" he asked. "The original plan was for you to observe for another week before we introduce ourselves to the staff." Sarah looked back at the kitchen door. She could hear the muffled sounds of the restaurant getting back to its rhythm, but she knew it was a fragile peace. The staff would be walking on eggshells, and Mr. Peterson would be sweating bullets, wondering what to do with her tomorrow. "The plan has changed," Sarah said, her voice filled with a new resolve. "The observation phase is over. We can't fix a culture of fear by hiding in the shadows. We need to turn on the lights, all of them. When tomorrow morning, call a mandatory all-staff meeting, 9 a.m. sharp. Tell them the new owner will be there to address the future of the Gilded Sparrow." And Mr. Vance Nate asked a hint of what was to come in his tone. "Oh, he'll be there too," Sarah said, a faint, determined smile playing on her lips, "though he won't know it yet. I looked him up earlier this week, just out of curiosity since he's such a regular. Vance Capital has been trying to buy this entire block for redevelopment for the past 6 months. The Gilded Sparrow under the Devancourt was the last holdout. He probably thinks with a new, unknown owner he can finally push the deal through." Nate let out a low whistle. So his little power play tonight wasn't just about a shirt, it was about establishing dominance, softening the target before the kill. "Exactly," Sarah confirmed. "He was marking his territory. He just chose the wrong person to mark it on. Send him an invitation. Nate, from you, an urgent meeting to discuss a mutually beneficial real estate opportunity. Make it for 9:30 at the restaurant." A slow, appreciative smile was evident in Nate's voice. "I see. You're not just turning on the lights, are you? You're setting a stage. The Gilded Sparrow has always been a theatre." Sarah replied, her eyes glinting in the dim alley light. "It's time for a new play to begin, and this time we're writing the script." She ended the call feeling the last vestiges of her waitress persona slip away. The uniform felt like a costume now. She walked back inside, past the still nervous kitchen staff, and went to her locker. She changed out of the uniform and into her own clothes, simple jeans and a sweater, yet she wore them with an authority that had been absent before. As she walked out the back door and into the cool night air, she didn't look back. The era of the invisible waitress was over. Tomorrow, Serafina Harrington, co-owner of the Gilded Sparrow, would make her debut. Nathaniel Harrington's office on the 54th floor of the Harrington Tower was the antithesis of Sterling Vance's world, where Vance's aesthetic was cold, hard-edged and ostentatious, all chrome, black marble and glass. Nate's was a sanctuary of warm woods, soft lighting, and comfortable, well-worn leather chairs. The walls were lined not with awards or framed magazine covers, but with architectural blueprints of his projects, a sustainable community center in a low-income neighborhood, a state-of-the-art public library, a park built on reclaimed industrial land. A massive picture window offered a god's-eye view of the city, but Nate often sat with his back to it, preferring the human-scale plans on his desk. He was a man whose power was quiet. He didn't need to raise his voice, because when he spoke, people listened. He commanded loyalty, not through fear, but through respect and a shared vision. After the call with Sarah, he sat in the stillness of his office for a long time, the city lights twinkling below like a fallen galaxy. He wasn't just angry, he was offended on a fundamental level. He and Sarah had built their life and their businesses on a simple principle: value the person, not the position. From the janitor to the lead engineer, everyone had a name, a story, and inherent worth. Sterling Vance's worldview was a direct assault on that principle. He pictured Sarah standing there in her simple uniform, absorbing the vitriol of a man who saw her as less than human. He felt a surge of protective fury, but he quickly reined it in. Rage was Vance's tool. It was clumsy and imprecise. Nate's tools were strategy, patience, and the careful application of leverage. He picked up the phone and dialed his assistant, a preternaturally calm woman named Catherine. "Catherine, I need 2 things," he said, his voice level. "First, draft an email to the general manager of the Gilded Sparrow, a Mr. Peterson. Inform him of a mandatory all-staff meeting tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. in the main dining room. I will be there to introduce myself as the new owner and discuss my vision for the restaurant's future." "Yes, Mr. Harrington," Catherine replied, her typing audible in the background. "Second, I need you to contact the office of Sterling Vance at Vance Capital Acquisitions. Set a meeting for me with him. Tomorrow 9:30 a.m. The location will be the Gilded Sparrow. Tell his assistant it's regarding the building acquisition he's been pursuing. Use the phrase, a time-sensitive and highly lucrative proposition. Vance can't resist bait like that. Consider it done. Will there be anything else? Just one more thing. Get me our complete file on the Vance Capital real estate deal for that block. I want every feasibility study, every rejected offer to the Divancourt, every communication. I want to know it inside and out by morning. It will be on your desk within the hour." After the call, Nate leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled. He thought about the Gilded Sparrow. It wasn't just another asset in his portfolio. It was the place he and Sarah had their first real date. He'd been a struggling architect with one big idea, and she'd been a graduate student in art history. They had saved for 2 months to afford a single meal there. He remembered the way the candlelight had danced in her eyes, the way she had spoken so passionately about the beauty of forgotten things, about restoring them to their former glory, rather than tearing them down. That was why they had bought it. The Divancourt family had been on the verge of selling to Vance, who would have undoubtedly gutted the historic building to make way for another soulless glass tower. When Nate heard the restaurant was for sale, he and Sarah had made an immediate above-asking offer, closing the deal through a subsidiary company to remain anonymous. Their plan was never to demolish it. It was to restore it, to polish the soul of the place, to make it a beacon of true hospitality, not just a feeding ground for the arrogant and wealthy. Sarah's undercover work was the first step in that restoration project, to understand its heart before performing surgery. Sterling Vance, in his blind arrogance, had just fast-tracked the entire process. He had revealed the deepest sickness in the restaurant's culture in a single ugly outburst. An hour later, as promised, a thick dossier landed on Nate's desk. He spent the next several hours poring over the documents, his mind absorbing every detail. Vance's plan was aggressive. He had already acquired every other property on the block. The Gilded Sparrow was the linchpin, the one piece that held his entire billion-dollar project at bay. The Divancourt had refused him on principle, unwilling to see their family's legacy demolished. Vance's offers had grown increasingly hostile. Now faced with a new, unknown owner, he was clearly preparing for a final assault. The meeting at 9:30 a.m. was his beachhead. Nate found a memo detailing Vance's strategy, a lowball initial offer to the new owner, followed by a campaign of public pressure and legal intimidation to force a sale. Vance likely assumed the new owner was a small-time restaurateur who could be easily bullied. He had no idea he was walking into a meeting with Nathaniel Harrington, a man who could buy and sell his entire company without a second thought. But this wasn't about money. It was about principle. It was about the look of fear in a busboy's eyes, the spinelessness of a manager, and the undeserved humiliation of the woman he loved. As the first hints of dawn began to streak the sky, Nate closed the file. He knew Vance's strategy, his motivations, his vulnerabilities. He had his own blueprint ready. The stage Sarah had spoken of was set. The cast was assembled. All that remained was for the curtain to rise. He picked up his phone and sent a simple text to his wife. "See you at the theatre. I've saved you a front row seat." The following morning at precisely 8:00 a.m., Sterling Vance strode into the boardroom of Vance Capital Acquisitions. The room was a monument to his ego. A single massive slab of polished obsidian served as the conference table. The chairs were severe leather and chrome. The only art on the wall was a framed, stylized chart showing the aggressive upward trajectory of his company's stock price. His senior executives, already assembled, sat straighter in their chairs as he entered. "Report," he commanded, taking his seat at the head of the table without so much as a good morning. One by one they detailed their victories. A hostile takeover of a rival firm was nearing completion. A portfolio of distressed assets had been acquired for pennies on the dollar and was being stripped for parts. Sterling listened, his expression a mixture of boredom and impatience. This was routine. The thrill of the hunt was gone. "What about the Astor Block project?" he asked, cutting off a vice president mid-sentence. "What about the Gilded Sparrow?" A junior executive eager to impress spoke up. "Sir, as you know, the Dvancourt finally sold. The new owner is an unknown operating through a shell corporation called Harrington Hospitality. We've had difficulty piercing the corporate veil, but our analysts suggest it's likely a small independent operator. A chef owner, perhaps," Sterling smirked. "A chef? Good. They're artists, sentimental, easily broken." He leaned back, a predatory gleam in his eye. "I had dinner there last night. The place is resting on its laurels. Stale. The staff is incompetent. The management is weak. A perfect target." His chief legal counsel, a man named Garrett, cleared his throat. "We received a communication from the new owner this morning, sir. He's requested a meeting. Today, at 9:30. Sterling raised an eyebrow. "So soon he's eager. What's the angle?" He described it as a time-sensitive and highly lucrative proposition. Garrett read from his tablet. A low chuckle rumbled in Sterling's chest. "He's trying to play hardball. The little chef thinks he can scare me into a higher offer. Pathetic." He tapped his fingers on the obsidian table, the sound like cracking ice. "I was there last night. I made my presence felt. Put the fear of God into the manager over a clumsy waitress. By now the new owner has heard the story. He knows who he's dealing with. This meeting is his white flag." He looked around the table at his team. "Garrett, you'll come with me." We walk in. I make a firm, non-negotiable offer, 20% below our last offer to the Dvancourt. I'll give him a sob story about the declining prestige of the location, the cost of renovations. When he balks, we remind him of the legal and financial pressure we can bring to bear. We'll have him signing the papers by lunch. He stood up, signaling the end of the meeting. As he walked toward the door, he paused to adjust the cuff of his fresh shirt, a pristine, brilliant white. "Oh, and Garrett," he added, a cruel smile touching his lips. "Remind me to get the name of that waitress I had fired last night. I might send her a gift basket, as a thank you for making my job this morning so much easier." Across town, in the cozy kitchen of their brownstone, Nate and Sarah Harrington were having a very different kind of morning meeting. The air smelled of freshly brewed coffee and toasted brioche. There were no executives, no obsidian tables. It was just the two of them sitting opposite each other at a rustic wooden table. Sarah was dressed in a simple but elegant navy blue dress. The waitress from the night before was gone, replaced by a woman who exuded a quiet, unshakable confidence. She was recounting the names and personalities of the staff she had worked with Thomas, the cynical but decent veteran waiter. Maria, the kindly hostess who remembered every regular's name. Leo, the terrified young busboy. "They're good people, Nate," she said, stirring her coffee. "They're just beaten down by a culture that's taught them the customer is always right, even when the customer is a monster. Peterson isn't an evil man. He's a weak one. He's so afraid of losing the history of the place that he's allowed its soul to corrode." Nate listened intently, nodding. He had the complete file on the Vance deal spread out on the table next to the butter dish. Vance thinks he's meeting a small-time operator he can intimidate. He has no idea that you're the reason we bought the place, or that I'm Harrington Hospitality. "He's walking into an ambush he laid for himself," Sarah said. "His arrogance is his Achilles' heel. He can't imagine a world where the waitress he humiliated holds any kind of power. To him, I was just part of the scenery." "Well," Nate said, reaching across the table to take her hand, "the scenery is about to bite back. Are you ready for this?" Sarah squeezed his hand, her gaze firm. "I'm not doing this for revenge, Nate. Revenge is what he would do. I'm doing this to send a message, to our staff, and to him. A message that decency isn't a weakness, and that respect is the most valuable currency we have. We're not just saving a building today. We're restoring its foundation." They finished their breakfast in comfortable silence, a partnership built on shared values and mutual respect. Theirs was an empire not of acquisitions and hostile takeovers, but of creation and restoration. While Sterling Vance was sharpening his knives for a kill, Nate and Sarah were preparing their tools for a groundbreaking. They left the house together, driving not in a chauffeured town car, but in their own modest electric vehicle. They were two architects on their way to inspect a new project, a project that began not with demolition, but with clearing out the rot that had been allowed to fester for far too long in the gilded cage of a restaurant they now called their own. The main dining room of the Gilded Sparrow was filled with an anxious energy. It was 8:55 a.m., and the entire staff, from the chefs in their starched whites to the dishwashers in their aprons, was gathered among the tables. They stood in nervous clusters, whispering amongst themselves. The news of a mandatory meeting with the mysterious new owner had sent a ripple of fear through them. Mr. Peterson stood near the front, dabbing his forehead with a handkerchief, his face a pasty shade of grey. He had spent a sleepless night, agonizing over the incident with Mr. Vance and the subsequent firing of Sarah. At precisely 9 o'clock, the main doors opened. The staff fell silent, turning in unison to see their new boss for the first time. Nathaniel Harrington walked in. He was not what they expected. He wasn't an imperious tycoon or a flamboyant celebrity chef. He was dressed in a simple, well-tailored blazer and slacks, and he moved with a calm, approachable demeanor. But it was the person who walked in, beside him, who caused a wave of audible gasps to sweep through the room. It was Sarah. She was not in her uniform. She was wearing the elegant navy blue dress from that morning, standing beside Nathaniel Harrington, not as an employee, but as an equal. She met the shocked and confused gazes of her former colleagues with a calm, steady expression. Thomas, the veteran waiter, stared with his mouth agape. Leo, the young busboy, looked as if he had seen a ghost. Mr. Peterson's face went from grey to a stark, bloodless white. He looked back and forth between Nate and Sarah, the horrifying truth beginning to dawn on him. Nate and Sarah walked to the front of the room. Nate stood before them, his hands clasped casually behind his back. "Good morning, everyone," he began, his voice filling the room. It was a calm, resonant voice without a hint of arrogance. "Thank you all for being here. My name is Nathaniel Harrington, and along with my wife, Seraphina." Harrington, he gestured to Sarah, whose nod of acknowledgement sent another shockwave through the staff. "We are the new owners of the Gilded Sparrow." The room erupted in frantic whispers. His wife? The waitress from last night was the owner's wife. The implications of the previous evening's events settled over them with the weight of a physical blow. Nate held up a hand, and the room fell silent again. "I know you have many questions, and I promise we will answer them. We bought this restaurant because we love it. We love its history, its character, and most of all the potential for what it can be, a place known not just for its food, but for its unparalleled hospitality, and for the respect with which it treats both its guests and its staff." He paused, his eyes sweeping over the crowd, finally landing on Mr. Peterson, who seemed to shrink under his gaze. "My wife has spent the last 3 weeks working alongside you all, not to spy, but to understand, to learn from you, to see what makes this place tick, and to identify where we can be better." And last night, his voice hardened slightly. She received a masterclass in what is broken here. At that moment, the front doors of the restaurant swung open again. Sterling Vance, followed by his lawyer, Garrett, strode in. He was early for his 9:30 meeting, a classic power move to catch his opponent off guard. He saw the assembled staff and the man speaking at the front and smirked. "Apologies for the interruption." Sterling's voice boomed, dripping with false sincerity. "I seem to have walked into a staff meeting. I have a 9:30 with the new owner." Nate turned to face him. "You're right on time, Mr. Vance. I'm Nathaniel Harrington." "We spoke on the phone." Sterling's eyes widened slightly in recognition. He knew the name Harrington, of course. A major player. This was more interesting than he thought. His smirk returned undeterred. "Harrington. A pleasure. I was just telling my legal counsel that I'm very much looking forward to discussing the future of this property," he said, extending a hand. Nate ignored the hand. "We'll get to that. But first, you're part of this meeting now. You were the star of last night's show, after all. It's only fitting you be here for the reviews." A flicker of confusion crossed Sterling's face. He scanned the front of the room again, his gaze passing over Nate, and then landing on the woman standing next to him. And then he saw her. It was the waitress. The recognition did not hit him like a lightning bolt. It was a slow, creeping horror that drained the color from his face. His brain struggled to reconcile the image of the meek, uniformed servant from the night before with the poised, elegant woman standing beside the powerful Nathaniel Harrington. He looked at her, then at Nate, then back at her. The name echoed in his mind. Seraphina Harrington, the owner's wife, the woman he had verbally eviscerated, the woman he had called a clumsy, incompetent fool, the woman he had demanded be fired. His confident smirk vanished, replaced by a slack-jawed expression of pure shock. The air in his lungs seemed to evaporate. Every bit of his bravado, his arrogance, his carefully constructed sense of superiority crumbled to dust in that single devastating moment of recognition. "You," he whispered, the single word barely audible. Sarah met his gaze, her expression not of triumph or malice, but of profound disappointment. "Me," she confirmed, her voice clear and steady. "Sterling Vance, the titan of industry. The boardroom shark, the man who prided himself on always being 10 steps ahead, was utterly and completely trapped." The theatre doors had been locked, the house lights were up, and he was the villain of the play, exposed for all to see. He had walked in, expecting to dictate the terms of a surrender, only to find he was attending his own execution. The silence in the dining room was absolute, thick with the weight of Sterling Vance's dawning horror. Every staff member stood as still as a statue, witnessing a power dynamic shift so seismically it felt as though the very floor was tilting. Sterling's lawyer Garrett looked utterly bewildered, glancing between his client's ashen face and the calm couple at the front of the room. Nate let the silence hang in the air for a long moment, allowing the full gravity of the situation to settle upon Sterling. Then he spoke, his voice calm, but infused with the unyielding strength of steel. "Mr. Vance." He began, his gaze fixed on the shell-shocked man. "You came here today to make an offer on this building. You believe it to be the last piece of a puzzle for your new development project. You came here assuming you would be dealing with a small-time owner you could easily intimidate. Let me be unequivocally clear. This property is not for sale. Not to you. Not ever." He took a step forward, his focus unwavering. "But your real estate ambitions are not why we are here. We are here because of what happened in this room last night. You see, my wife and I believe that the foundation of any successful enterprise is respect. It's a simple concept, but one you seem to find profoundly difficult to grasp." He turned his attention to the assembled staff. "Last night, one of you was publicly humiliated, verbally abused, and wrongfully dismissed not because of a mistake, but to satisfy the ego of a bully. The mistake itself, a simple accidental spill, was trivial. The reaction to it was not. His eyes found Leo, the young busboy who was watching with wide, terrified eyes. "Leo, step forward." Leo hesitated, then shuffled nervously to the front. "Leo," Nate said kindly, "last night was not your fault. You are a valued member of this team. From now on, know that the ownership of this restaurant will always have your back. You will never be made to feel small in this establishment again." He gave the boy a reassuring nod, and Leo retreated, a look of profound relief on his face. Nate's gaze then fell upon Mr. Peterson, who was visibly trembling. "Mr. Peterson, you have managed this restaurant for 25 years. You have preserved its history, and for that you should be commended. But you have also allowed a culture of fear to take root. Last night you were faced with a choice: defend your employee's dignity or appease a wealthy customer. You chose to sacrifice your employee. You stood by silently while she was berated, and then you carried out Mr. Vance's illegal demand that she be fired." Peterson opened his mouth to speak, to offer an excuse, but Nate held up a hand. It was not an easy position to be in. Nate conceded, his voice softening, with a hint of pity. "But leadership is defined by the choices we make in difficult moments, and in that moment you failed. You failed your staff, you failed this restaurant, and you failed the very principle of hospitality. Effective immediately, your employment here is terminated." The finality of the statement was a thunderclap in the room. Firing a 25-year veteran was a powerful statement. Nate wasn't just pruning a leaf. He was cutting out what he saw as the root of the problem. Finally, Nate turned his full attention back to Sterling Vance, who had not moved, his face a frozen mask of disbelief. "And now to you, Mr. Vance. You wanted my waitress fired. Instead, I have fired my manager for not protecting her from you. You threatened to destroy this restaurant. Instead, you have shown me exactly what I need to do to rebuild it. You see people like Sarah, people who serve you as nothing, nameless faces who exist only for your convenience." Nate walked slowly toward him, closing the distance between them until they were only a few feet apart. Sarah stood her ground, watching a silent partner in this dismantling. "Let me tell you who that nothing is," Nate said, his voice dropping to a low, intense level. "She is Serafina Harrington. She holds a master's degree in art history and is one of the most respected restoration consultants in the country. She is a board member on 3 major charitable foundations. She is my partner, my equal, and the heart of this entire enterprise. That woman you called incompetent and graceless possesses more integrity, intelligence, and grace in her little finger than you have in your entire being." Every word was a hammer blow to Sterling's shattered ego. He was being publicly dissected, his arrogance laid bare for all to see. "Your offer for this building is rejected," Nate continued, his voice resonating with finality. "Your standing as a patron of this restaurant is revoked. You are no longer welcome here, and I would advise you to reconsider the way you do business, because the world is smaller than you think, and you never know who you might be talking to." Nate stepped back, standing beside his wife once more. The message was clear. The reckoning was over. Sterling Vance stood there for another moment, his face a maelstrom of humiliation and fury. He looked at Sarah, searching for a hint of triumph, of gloating, but he found none. He found only a calm, steady gaze that offered no quarter and no satisfaction. It was the gaze of a judge who had already passed sentence. Without another word, he turned on his heel and strode out of the restaurant, his lawyer scrambling behind him. The heavy oak doors swung shut, leaving behind a room full of stunned staff and the dawn of a new era. Sarah finally stepped forward, addressing the team herself for the first time as their new owner. "My name is Serafina Harrington," she began, her voice warm but firm. "What you witnessed today is the end of the old way of doing things. From this moment on, the Gilded Sparrow will be a place built on mutual respect. We will be a team. We will support each other. And we will provide the best service in this city, not because we are afraid of our customers, but because we take pride in our craft. The work of rebuilding begins today, and I am honored to be doing it with all of you." A tentative, then growing round of applause filled the room. For the first time in a long time, the air in the Gilded Sparrow wasn't filled with fear or tension, but with a fragile yet powerful sense of hope. The gilded cage was broken, and its inhabitants were finally free to fly. In the end, this wasn't just a story about a mistaken identity. It was a story about the true nature of strength. Sterling Vance believed strength was loud, aggressive, and built on the fear of others. He learned in the most public and humiliating way possible that he was wrong. True strength is often quiet. It's the dignity of a waitress holding her ground. It's the resolve of a leader who values people over profit. And it's the unbreakable bond between two people who know that a real empire isn't built of glass and steel, but of respect and integrity. The Gilded Sparrow was just a restaurant, but on that day it became a classroom, and the lesson was one Sterling Vance would never forget. What did you think of this story? Have you ever witnessed someone in a position of power underestimate the person right in front of them? Let us know your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of justice and unexpected twists, please give this video a thumbs up, share it with someone who needs to see it, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more real-life stories that will make you think. What is the true value of a single dollar? For most, it's nothing. A forgotten coin in a pocket, not even enough for a cup of coffee. But what if that dollar was a key? A test. What if the most insignificant gesture you've ever received was actually the most important moment of your life? This is the story of Anya Sharma, a waitress drowning in debt and despair, who served a meal to one of the world's most reclusive billionaires. He left her a $1 tip on a $5,000 bill. But it's what she did next, her simple, unexpected reaction, that set in motion a chain of events that would unravel a decades-old secret and change her destiny forever. Stay with us. The air in the Gilded Sparrow was different. It was thicker, heavier, scented with money, and the kind of perfume that didn't come from a department store. Anya Sharma breathed it in every night, and every night it felt like she was breathing in a world she could serve, but never join. The restaurant, a bastion of old-world New York elegance, nestled in a quiet, tree-lined street on the Upper East Side, was a theater, and she was merely part of the scenery. Her feet throbbed. It was a familiar, deep-seated ache that started in her arches and radiated up her calves, a constant reminder of the 12-hour shifts. She moved with an economy of motion born from years of practice balancing trays laden with seared scallops and truffle-infused risotto, her smile a carefully constructed mask. It was a good mask. It had to be. It hid the exhaustion, the gnawing anxiety about the stack of medical bills on her small kitchen table, and the ghost of a dream she was too tired to even remember most days. Just 3 years ago, her hands now calloused from hot plates and polishing cutlery had been covered in clay and charcoal. Anya had been the star sculpture student at Pratt Institute, her work described as viscerally alive. She could see shapes in blocks of marble, feel stories in twisted wire. Then came the phone call. Her younger sister Nina diagnosed with a rare autoimmune disorder that required experimental treatments not fully covered by any insurance plan. Their parents were gone, lost in a car crash years ago, leaving Anya as Nina's sole guardian. The choice was never a choice. She dropped out, sold her chisels and tools, and picked up a tray. The art school scholarship evaporated, replaced by the relentless reality of rent and pharmacy co-pays. Tonight was a Tuesday, usually a slower, more manageable evening. But a late reservation had come in under a discreet booking name, Mr. Black. The maitre d', a perpetually stressed man named Lawrence, had pulled Anya aside, his voice, a low, urgent whisper. "Sharma, table 7. This is a big one. Very, very big. No mistakes. Don't be too chatty. Don't be invisible. Just be perfect." Anya nodded, the practiced, deferential nod of a seasoned waitress. Table 7 was the best in the house, a secluded alcove with a plush velvet banquette that offered a panoramic view of the restaurant's private garden. When the party arrived, the usual low hum of the dining room seemed to dip a few decibels. There were 2 men. The first was easy to read, Gregory Thorne. He was in his late 40s with a mane of silver hair, a tailored suit that probably cost more than Anya's car, and a Rolex that caught the light with every expansive gesture. He radiated a slick, predatory confidence. He was the kind of man who enjoyed being noticed. The other man was the one who held the room's gravity. He was older, perhaps in his late 60s, with a face that looked like it had been carved from granite. His hair was a shock of white, but his eyes, deep-set and startlingly dark, missed nothing. He wore a simple dark grey suit, impeccably tailored, but devoid of any brand-name flash. He didn't speak as he sat down. He simply absorbed the space around him, his presence a quiet, immense weight. This was Damien Blackwood. Anya knew the name, of course. Everyone did. Blackwood was a legend, a ghost. He was the architect of a global tech and logistics empire, a man who had famously started with nothing but a single brilliant idea for optimizing supply chains in his 20s. He was now worth an estimated $50 billion, but he was pathologically private. There were fewer than a dozen authenticated photos of him in existence. He gave no interviews, attended no galas, and his company Blackwood Consolidated Pomo was a fortress. Seeing him here in the flesh was like spotting a mythical creature. "Good evening, gentlemen," Anya said, her voice smooth and even, betraying none of the shock she felt. "My name is Anya, and I'll be taking care of you this evening." May I start you with some water?" Gregory Thorne waved a dismissive hand. "Voss still. 2 bottles. And we'll have the 98, Chateau Margaux." He didn't look at her, his eyes already scanning the menu, with an air of entitlement. Damien Blackwood, however, was looking directly at her. His gaze wasn't unkind, nor was it friendly. It was analytical probing. It felt less like he was seeing a waitress, and more like he was examining a specimen, noting the faint tremor in her hand as she poured the water, the slight wear on the cuff of her uniform, the way her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. It was unnerving. "Thank you, Anya," he said. His voice was a low baritone, gravelly with age, but clear as a bell. It was the first time a customer in a long time had used her name with such deliberate clarity. The meal was an exercise in tension. Gregory Thorne did most of the talking, boasting about a recent acquisition, name-dropping politicians and CEOs, a peacock displaying his feathers for an unimpressed audience. Damien Blackwood said very little. He ate slowly, deliberately, his dark eyes occasionally flicking up to watch Anya as she cleared a plate or refilled a glass. Each time, she felt the intensity of his observation like a physical touch. He asked her a single unexpected question when she presented the dessert menus. "Anya," he said, cutting through Thorne's monologue. "This finial." He gestured with his fork toward the intricately carved wooden pineapple atop the banquette's corner post. "It's new." Anya was taken aback. The finial had been broken a month ago by a rowdy guest. The owner, Mr. Russo, had gotten a quote to have it professionally repaired that made his eyes water. So Anya had taken the splintered pieces home. In the few precious hours between her shift ending and sleep taking over, she had carefully glued, filled, and recarved the damaged sections, matching the original design perfectly. She'd used the last of her old wood-carving tools. She hadn't told anyone. "Yes, sir. The old one was damaged," she said, choosing her words carefully. "This one is better." Blackwood stated not as a compliment, but as a fact. "The lines are cleaner, more confident." He turned back to his menu, leaving Anya standing in stunned silence. Gregory Thorne shot her an annoyed look, irritated by the interruption. They skipped dessert and asked for the check. Anya ran the card, a black, featureless piece of metal, with no name, only a number. The total came to £4,815.62. She placed the leather billfold on the table. Thorne was already on his phone, sealing another deal in a loud voice. Blackwood took the billfold, scribbled a signature, and placed something in Seoul. "Thank you, Anya," he said again, his eyes meeting hers one last time. It was an excellent meal. Then they were gone, leaving a wake of silence behind them. Her fellow waiters looked at her with a mixture of awe and envy. The Blackwood table. The tip would be legendary. Enough to cover Nina's next treatment cycle, maybe even pay off a chunk of her credit card debt. Her heart pounded in her chest, a frantic bird beating against her ribs. She waited a full 5 minutes, letting her hands steady, before she walked back to the table. She picked up the leather billfold. It felt strangely light. Her breath hitched. She opened it. Inside, on the line, designated for the tip, Damien Blackwood had written in firm, clear script, $100. Next to it, the grand total, $4,816.62. Tucked into the sleeve was the signature slip and a single, crisp $1 bill. The world tilted on its axis. The hum of the restaurant faded to a dull roar in her ears. $4,800 and a $1 tip. It wasn't just cheap, it was an insult, a deliberate, calculated, soul-crushing statement. Every eye in the restaurant was on her, waiting to see the legendary tip, waiting to see her reaction, and all she could do was stare at that single, solitary dollar. Anya stood frozen, the leather billfold clutched in her hand. The dollar bill inside felt heavier than a block of lead. It was a brand-new note, so crisp it could have been printed that morning. George Washington's portrait stared up at her, his expression impassive, almost mocking. $1. The number echoed in the silent chamber of her mind. It wasn't just the lack of a generous tip. A 0 would have been better. A 0 could be an oversight, a mistake made by a man unused to handling his own affairs. But $1 was intentional. It was a gesture that required thought. It was a message. Her first instinct was a hot, blinding flash of fury. How dare he? This man who could buy the entire city block without noticing the expense, who spent $5,000 on wine and food as a casual Tuesday dinner, looked her in the eye, used her name, and then left her a tip that was less than the cost of a subway token. He had commented on her carving, seen her work, and then dismissed her with the most contemptuous sum possible. The humiliation was a physical thing, a burning sensation that crept up her neck and tightened her throat. Her colleague, a jaded waiter named Ben, sidled up to her. "Well, don't keep us in suspense. Did he buy you a condo?" he whispered, his eyes gleaming with vicarious greed. Anya couldn't speak. She just opened the billfold and showed him. Ben's jaw dropped. He blinked, then looked again. A low whistle escaped his lips. "No way, no way, Blackwood. The billionaire left you a buck." His whisper turned into a choked laugh of disbelief. That's brutal, man. That's colder than the walk-in freezer." The word spread through the staff like wildfire. Whispers turned to stares. The sympathy in their eyes was mixed with a morbid curiosity, the kind people reserve for watching a car crash. The legendary tip was indeed legendary, but for all the wrong reasons. Anya felt her carefully constructed mask begin to crack. The professional smile faltered. Her shoulders slumped. She wanted to run, to go to the staff bathroom and either scream or burst into tears. Lawrence, the maitre d', stormed over his face, a thundercloud. "What is this I hear?" "Let me see that." Anya handed it over. Lawrence stared at the receipt, his face turning a blotchy red. Unbelievable. The nerve of these people. They think they own the world. He looked at Anya, his expression a mixture of pity and frustration. "Look, Sharma, don't take it personally. These guys, they live in a different reality. He probably didn't even think about it." But Anya knew that wasn't true. Damian Blackwood had thought about it. Every action he took seemed deliberate, from the way he sat to the way he observed her. He had looked right at her. He knew. This was a statement. The question was, what was it trying to say? She retreated to the small, cluttered break area, the $1 bill now in her apron pocket. She could feel its crisp edges through the fabric. Her mind raced, cycling through a tornado of emotions, rage, shame, confusion, and a deep, profound sense of injustice. The money itself wasn't the point. Not really. Yes, a large tip would have been a godsend for Nina's mounting medical expenses. It would have been a brief respite from the constant crushing financial pressure. But this was about dignity. Her work, her professionalism, her very existence in that dining room had been valued at 100 cents. She thought about Nina, frail but fierce, whose smile was the only thing that kept Anya going. She thought about the mountain of bills, the threatening red letters on the envelopes. The hope that had foolishly bloomed in her chest for 2 hours had been violently extinguished, leaving behind a bitter ashen residue. Despair began to seep in, cold and heavy. This was her life. Serving condescending men who saw her as less than human, forever chasing bills she could never quite get ahead of. The dream of the artist of the sculptor felt like a fantasy from another person's life. She pulled the receipt from her pocket and looked at it again. 4,815.662. And then his signature. A strong, decisive scrawl. Damien Blackwood. Beneath it on the customer copy was the empty space where she was supposed to just accept this. And then something shifted. The anger was still there, a hot coal in her gut. But something else rose to meet it, a stubborn spark of defiance. The same spirit that had driven her to spend hours meticulously recreating a broken wooden finial for no pay and no recognition. The same spirit her father, a brilliant but perpetually broke engineer, had possessed. He used to tell her, "Anya, they can take your money, they can take your time, but never ever let them take your grace." She wasn't just a waitress. She was Anya Sharma. She was a sister. She was an artist, and she would not be defined by this man's contemptuous dollar. She wouldn't cry. She wouldn't complain to her manager again. She wouldn't let this break her. She would respond. An idea bold and terrifying formed in her mind. She walked back out into the now emptying dining room and approached Lawrence. "Lawrence," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "I need the guest copy of that receipt back, the one he signed." Lawrence looked at her confused. "Why, for a souvenir, Anya, just throw it out. Forget him." "I'm not going to throw it out," she said. "I'm going to do something else." She took a pen from her apron. Her hand was shaking, but not from fear or weakness. It was shaking with a strange, exhilarating sense of purpose. She smoothed the receipt on a clear section of the service bar. For a moment, she wasn't in a restaurant. She was back in her studio, a blank canvas before her. This little slip of paper was her canvas now. She wouldn't be rude. She wouldn't be sarcastic. That would be playing his game, sinking to the level of pettiness the dollar suggested. She would rise above it. She would give him the one thing he clearly didn't expect. She took a deep breath, and she began to write. The pen felt alien in her hand, so different from the familiar weight of a chisel or a sculpting tool. Yet as she touched the tip to the paper, a sense of calm settled over her. This was her response, her one chance to reclaim her dignity from the cold indifference of a billionaire. She didn't write on the merchant copy. That had to be filed. She took the customer copy, the one meant for Blackwood's own records, which he had left behind on the table. It was on this slip of paper next to his powerful signature and the insulting $100 that she would make her stand. Her handwriting was neat, a relic from years of art school drafting classes. She wrote carefully, choosing her words not to wound, but to convey a truth he had overlooked. "Mr. Blackwood, thank you for dining at the Gilded Sparrow tonight. On the receipt you valued my service at $1. I accept it not as an insult, but as a challenge. You see, a single dollar can be powerful. For some, it is the start of a fortune. For others, it is the meal they weren't sure they would have. It can be a seed, or it can be a symbol. You are a man who clearly understands the value of building something from nothing. So I will treat this dollar with the respect it deserves. I will invest it, not in stocks or bonds, but in a moment of kindness for someone who needs it more than I do. Perhaps it will buy a coffee for a homeless person on a cold morning, or a flower for someone having a bad day. Thank you for this reminder that true value is not always what is written on a check, but what one chooses to do with what they are given. I hope you have a safe evening. Sincerely, Anya Sharma, Table 7, the artist who fixed the finial. She added the last line on impulse, a final quiet assertion of her identity beyond the uniform. She reread the words. They were not angry. They were not sycophantic. They were simple, direct, and filled with a quiet grace she didn't even know she possessed. It was a response he could not have anticipated. She had taken his gesture of contempt and transformed it into an act of charity, subtly turning the tables on him. She had refused to be the victim. Ben watched her, his expression one of utter bewilderment. What did you do? Are you writing him a complaint? They'll fire you, Anya. No, she said, folding the note neatly. I'm just closing out the check. Her next move was even bolder. She walked to the front desk where Lawrence was sorting through the evening's reservations. Lawrence, I need an address, she said. What address? Anya, go home. Get some rest. The booking address for Mr. Black. You have it on file. I need to mail him his receipt. Lawrence looked at her as if she had grown a second head. Are you insane? We do not contact guests, especially not this guest. You'll get me fired. You'll get yourself blacklisted from every restaurant in this city. He left his copy. Anya insisted, her voice unwavering. It's a business expense. He'll need it for his records. It's my professional duty to ensure he receives it. She was using the language of the service industry, a shield of professionalism for her audacious plan. I won't say I'm from the restaurant. I'll just mail it. Standard procedure. Lawrence argued for 5 minutes, but there was a stubborn light in Anya's eyes he had never seen before. Finally defeated and deeply worried, he scribbled an address on a piece of paper. It wasn't a home address, but the corporate headquarters of Blackwood Consolidated on Park Avenue. I never did this, Sharma. This is on you. Thank you, Lawrence, she said, taking the paper. The next morning, after just 4 hours of sleep, Anya woke up before her alarm. The first thing she did was take the crisp $1 bill from her uniform. She went to the corner bodega, bought a single stamp and an envelope. With the change, she bought a hot coffee. On her way to the post office, she saw a man huddled in a doorway, shivering in the early morning chill. An old man with weary eyes and hands raw from the cold. She walked up to him and held out the coffee. Here, she said softly, for you. The man looked up surprised and took it with a grateful nod. God bless you, miss. Anya felt a strange lightness in her chest. She had followed through. The dollar was already invested. At the post office, she sealed the envelope containing the folded receipt with her note inside. Her hand hovered over the mailbox slot for a long moment. This was the point of no return. She could lose her job. She could become a pariah in the industry she depended on to survive. Or nothing could happen. The note could be thrown away by some mailroom clerk, never to be seen by the man it was intended for. She thought of her father's words, "Never let them take your grace." She pushed the envelope through the slot. It was gone. The days that followed were thick with anxiety. Every time Lawrence looked at her, she expected him to say, "You're fired." Every phone call from an unknown number made her heart leap into her throat. She went to work, smiled her professional smile, cared for Nina, and tried to pretend that she hadn't just thrown a message in a bottle into the most powerful and unpredictable ocean in the world. The incident with the dollar had faded from the staff's gossip, replaced by new dramas. For everyone else, it was over. For Anya, the waiting had just begun. A week passed, then another. Nothing. The silence from Park Avenue was absolute. The hope that had flickered within her began to die, replaced by a weary resignation. It had been a foolish, romantic gesture. Of course he'd never seen it. She had made her stand to an empty room. Life went on a monotonous cycle of work and worry. Nina had a bad week, and a new expensive medication was prescribed. The credit card bill arrived, and Anya felt the familiar squeeze of panic. The dollar, the note, the brief feeling of empowerment. It all felt like a distant dream. She was just a waitress again, and that was all she would ever be. 70 floors above Park Avenue, in an office that was less a workspace and more a temple of minimalist power. Damien Blackwood sat behind a desk carved from a single piece of reclaimed oak. The room was silent, the view a panoramic sweep of the city he had in many ways conquered. His desk was completely clear, save for a single tablet and a small, cream-colored envelope. The envelope had arrived via inter-office mail, flagged by his long-serving executive assistant Martha for its unusual nature. It was addressed to him personally, sent via standard post to the main corporate address, a channel no one who actually knew him ever used. His personal mail was filtered through a half-dozen layers of security. This had slipped through the cracks of the public-facing system. He had opened it, expecting a crank letter or an unsolicited business proposal. Instead, he found the customer copy of his receipt from the Gilded Sparrow, and tucked inside a handwritten note. He read Anya Sharma's words once, then a second time, then a third. A slow, unfamiliar sensation bloomed in his chest. It was not amusement. It was not anger. It was a profound sense of surprise. In his world, people responded to power in predictable ways. They fawned. They groveled. They asked for things. They seethed with impotent rage. They threatened lawsuits. He had built an empire on his ability to predict human behavior, to see patterns in greed, ambition, and fear. This was not in his playbook. He had left the $1 tip for a very specific reason. It was a test, but it was a cruel one, the final stage of a multi-layered evaluation. His friend Dominic Russo, the owner of the Gilded Sparrow, had been his eyes and ears for months. Damien had given him a strange set of criteria. He was looking for someone with integrity, resilience, a quiet intelligence, and a creative spark that hardship hadn't managed to extinguish. Russo had mentioned Anya Sharma. He'd told Damien about her background, her cancelled scholarship, her sick sister. He'd even mentioned offhandedly how she had fixed the broken finial without being asked. That had piqued Damien's interest. The finial was the first test. His comment about it at dinner was to see if she would take credit, if she would be boastful. She hadn't been. She had been modest and professional. The second test was her demeanor throughout the meal, enduring Gregory Thorne's boorish arrogance with unwavering composure. The $1 tip was the final brutal filter. It was designed to provoke a raw emotional response, to see what lay beneath the professional veneer. He had expected anger tears a complaint to the manager. He had expected a typical human reaction. He had not expected grace. He had not expected charity. He had not expected her to take his cynical gesture and elevate it. I will invest it in a moment of kindness. The line resonated with him on a level he hadn't accessed in years. And the final sign-off. The artist who fixed the finial. It was a declaration, not of defiance, but of identity. She was telling him who she was, not what he had tried to make her. He swiveled in his chair and looked out at the city. The reason for this bizarre covert search was a secret he held close to his heart, a weight of guilt he had carried for over 30 years. It concerned Anya's father, David Sharma. Decades ago, before Blackwood Consolidated was a titan, Damien had been a ruthless young entrepreneur. David Sharma was a brilliant, gentle-souled engineer working at a small firm Damien was acquiring. David had developed a revolutionary logistics algorithm, a piece of code so elegant it was practically art. It was the key to unlocking massive efficiency gains. Damien knew it was David's work, but the intellectual property belonged to the firm. He acquired the company, took the algorithm, and built his empire upon it. He had paid the firm, of course, but David Sharma, the true genius behind it, got nothing but a severance package. Damien had told himself it was just business, but he never forgot the look in David's eyes, not of anger, but of deep, quiet disappointment. David went on to live a modest life, never achieving the success his intellect deserved, and died too young. The guilt had festered in Damien for decades. He couldn't undo the past, but he could make amends to the future. He learned David had 2 daughters. He wanted to help them, but not with a simple handout. That would be too easy an insult to the memory of a man who valued integrity over wealth. He needed to know if David's character, his grace under pressure, had passed to his child. He needed to find the artist, not just the survivor. Anya Sharma's note was the proof. She was her father's daughter. He buzzed his intercom. "Martha, get me Evelyn Reed on the line. And find out everything you can about a young woman named Anya Sharma and her sister Nina Sharma. Medical history, financial status, everything. Be discreet." Evelyn Reed was his personal lawyer, a woman as sharp and unforgiving as a shard of glass. She handled the matters that required absolute precision and zero sentimentality. While he waited for the call, Gregory Thorne entered his office, all teeth and confidence. "Damien Morning, I'm about to close the deal on that Singapore port contract. They're folding on all our key demands." Damien didn't look up from the note. "Gregory, do you remember the waitress from the Gilded Sparrow the other night?" Thorne scoffed. "The pretty one, vaguely. Why, I left her a $1 tip," Damien said, his voice flat. Thorne chuckled. "I saw that. Savage. Putting the help in their place. What was that about?" "It was about seeing what she would do," Damien said, finally looking at Thorne, his dark eyes cold. "She took the $1, bought a coffee for a homeless man, and sent me a letter explaining the principles of true value." Thorne's smile faltered. He didn't understand. "A nutcase, then. You get all sorts." "No." Damien said the word like a chip of ice. "She's an artist." He folded the note and placed it in his breast pocket. "Gregory, I'm transferring you to the head of the South American division. You'll be based in Sao Paulo, effective immediately." Thorne was floored. "Sao Paulo, but the Singapore deal." "That's a demotion. Why?" "Because you saw a pretty waitress to be put in her place," Damien said, turning back to his window. "And I saw a person of character. Your perspective is limited. Go and broaden it. My jet will be ready for you tomorrow." Thorne stood there sputtering, but he knew better than to argue. A decision from Damien Blackwood was as final as gravity. He backed out of the office, his world turned upside down. The intercom buzzed. "Ms. Reed is on line 1, sir." Damien picked up the phone. "Evelyn," he said, his voice now devoid of all emotion, "I have a new project for you. It's a delicate matter. Its name is Anya Sharma." The ripple had hit the shore. Now the tide was about to turn. 2 weeks after she had mailed the letter, Anya had convinced herself it was a forgotten dream. Life had settled back into its grueling rhythm. Nina's condition had stabilized, but the cost of her new medication was staggering, wiping out what little savings Anya had managed to scrape together. The Gilded Sparrow felt more like a cage than ever, the forced smiles and polite chatter grating on her frayed nerves. The brief flicker of defiance she had felt was gone, smothered by the heavy blanket of reality. One afternoon, a letter arrived. It was not a bill or a junk mail flyer. The envelope was made of thick, creamy cardstock, her name and address written in elegant, fluid calligraphy. There was no return address, only a simple embossed seal on the back, a stylized BR. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was a single sheet of matching cardstock. The message was brief and printed in a severe, no-nonsense font. Anya Sharma. This letter serves as an invitation to a meeting to discuss a matter of potential significance to you. The meeting will be held this Friday at 2:00 p.m. at the offices of Reed & Associates, located at 450 Park Avenue, Suite 5500. A car will be sent to your address at 1:15 p.m. to escort you. Please be prompt. Sincerely, Evelyn Reed-esque. Reed & Associates, Park Avenue, a car service. Anya's mind went into overdrive. She had never heard of Evelyn Reed. What matter of potential significance? Her first thought was that she was being sued, that Damien Blackwood, offended by her audacity, was bringing the full weight of his legal team down on her for harassing him. Panic, cold and sharp, seized her. She was going to lose her job, be buried in legal fees she could never hope to pay. This was the consequence of her foolish pride. She spent the next 2 days in a state of quiet terror. She told no one, not wanting to worry Nina or invite Lawrence's "I told you so." She considered not going, just disappearing. But the summons was too formal, too powerful. Ignoring it felt like it would only make things worse. On Friday, she asked for the day off from the restaurant, citing a personal appointment. At exactly 1:15 p.m., a black Lincoln Town car, so polished it looked like a pool of liquid shadow, pulled up in front of her modest apartment building. The driver, a man in a crisp suit, got out and opened the door for her without a word. The ride downtown was surreal. Anya, in her best and only blazer, felt like an imposter as the city's landscape shifted from the worn brick of her neighborhood to the gleaming steel and glass of Midtown Manhattan. The offices of Reed & Associates were on the 55th floor. The reception area was a study in intimidating minimalism: white marble floors, gray suede walls, and a single, terrifyingly severe receptionist who directed her to a conference room. The room had one glass wall with a view that seemed to stretch to the edge of the world. Anya sat at the enormous mahogany table, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, feeling smaller than she ever had in her life. After a few minutes, the door opened and a woman entered. She was in her 50s, with sharp, intelligent features, hair pulled back in a severe chignon, and eyes the color of a winter sky. She wore a perfectly tailored gray suit. She radiated an aura of competence so intense it was practically a force field. "Ms. Sharma," she said, her voice crisp and devoid of warmth. "I am Evelyn Reed. Thank you for coming. Please have some water." She gestured to a pitcher on the table, but didn't wait for an answer. She sat opposite Anya, placing a thin leather portfolio on the table between them. "I'll be direct, as I find it saves time," Evelyn began. I represent a client who has taken an interest in your situation. This client has become aware of certain financial hardships you are facing, specifically regarding your sister's medical care. Anya's blood ran cold. Who is your client? Is it Damien Blackwood? Evelyn's expression didn't flicker. My client prefers to remain anonymous at this stage. Let's call him a benefactor. She opened the portfolio. My benefactor is prepared to establish a trust. This trust will cover in full all of Nina Sharma's medical expenses, past, present, and future. It will also provide a generous monthly stipend for her living and care expenses. Anya stared at her, speechless. This wasn't a lawsuit. This was a rescue. A lifeline thrown from an invisible hand. It was too much, too sudden. Why was the only word she could manage to push out. Why would anyone do this? My client believes in targeted philanthropy, Evelyn said smoothly. He identifies individuals who are facing undue hardship and provides assistance. Consider it a no-strings-attached gift. No strings attached. Anya had lived long enough to know that nothing, especially not from people who employed lawyers like Evelyn Reed, was ever truly free. The suspicion returned a knot in her stomach. What's the catch? Anya asked, her voice stronger now. What do I have to do? A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched Evelyn's lips. There is no catch in the way you mean. There is, however, a condition, a formality. She slid a single document across the table. It was an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement dense with legalese. You will be required to sign this agreeing never to discuss the source of these funds, this meeting or my client with anyone, for any reason. Furthermore, she paused, her gaze intensifying. My client owns several art galleries and foundations. He is always looking for new talent to support. He is prepared to offer you a significant personal grant, enough to allow you to leave your current employment and return to your artistic pursuits full-time. It was the dream, the impossible buried dream, offered up on a silver platter. Leave the restaurant. Go back to sculpting. Take care of Nina without the constant terror of debt. It was everything she had ever wanted, and it felt deeply, fundamentally wrong. This wasn't a gift. It was a transaction. An anonymous billionaire was trying to buy her dream and her silence. Why? What was he hiding? The memory of the $1 tip surfaced, that act of cruelty, followed by this act of overwhelming, anonymous generosity. It didn't add up. It felt like a manipulation, another more sophisticated test. And if I sign this, Anya said, gesturing to the NDA, this benefactor also offers me an art grant. A very substantial one, Evelyn confirmed. So he buys my silence, and he buys my art. Anya stated, the pieces clicking into place in her mind. It was a golden cage. He would solve her problems, but he would own her story. He would turn her art, her soul, into another one of his assets. Just then, Anya's phone buzzed. It was a text from her co-worker, Ben. She glanced at it. Ben. You won't believe this. That slick suit Thorne, the guy who was with Blackwood. He just came into the restaurant. He was asking for you. Seemed really desperate. Said he had an offer for you that was better than anything Blackwood could ever give you. Lawrence told him you had the day off. The guy looked furious. Watch your back. A new player had just entered the game. Gregory Thorne. He knew. He was making a move. He was trying to get to her before his old boss did. Anya looked up from her phone, her mind racing. She was caught between two powerful invisible forces, One was offering her a gilded cage. The other was a snake in the grass, likely offering a poisoned apple. She looked Evelyn Reed directly in the eye. The fear was gone, replaced by a cold, clear resolve. "Ms. Reed," she said, pushing the unsigned NDA back across the table. "I appreciate the offer. It's more generous than I can possibly imagine. But before I sign anything, I have one condition of my own." Evelyn Reed raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. No one gave her conditions. "I will not accept a single penny from a man who won't look me in the eye," Anya said, her voice shaking slightly but full of conviction. "I will not be a project for some anonymous benefactor. If your client wants to help me, he can meet me, face to face, and he can tell me why." Evelyn Reed's composure, as solid and impenetrable as the marble in the lobby, finally showed a hairline crack. She was momentarily speechless, an occurrence so rare it was noteworthy. She stared at Anya not with annoyance, but with a new grudging respect. She had presented the perfect solution, a turnkey escape from a life of hardship, and this young woman had just pushed it back across the table, demanding the one thing Damien Blackwood never gave a personal audience. "Ms. Sharma," Evelyn said, recovering quickly, her tone laced with a warning. "My client does not meet people. That is not how he operates. I strongly advise you to reconsider. This offer will not be made again." "Then I guess I will have to decline," Anya said, a terrifying calm washing over her. She stood up, her legs surprisingly steady. "Thank you for your time, Ms. Reed. Please pass along my regrets and my condition to your client." She turned and walked out of the conference room, through the silent, opulent office, and into the elevator, her heart hammering against her ribs. She had just walked away from security, from a future for Nina, from her own resurrected dream. It was the most insane, self-destructive thing she had ever done. And it felt absolutely right. As she stepped out onto Park Avenue, the city's noise rushing back in, she pulled out her phone and reread Ben's text. "Gregory Thorne, an offer better than anything Blackwood could ever give you." Thorne was the key. He was the disgruntled, demoted executive. He was the weak link in Blackwood's world of secrets. He might have the answers she needed. Instead of going home, she took the subway back to the Gilded Sparrow. She found Ben polishing glasses at the bar. "Tell me everything he said," Anya demanded. Ben's eyes were wide. "Anya, it was weird. He was slick but also sweaty, desperate. He said he knew Blackwood was trying to get to you, and that it was all a scam. He said Blackwood ruins people, and he wanted to warn you. He left his card, told me to have you call him day or night. Said it was a matter of life and death." Ben slid a heavy embossed business card across the bar. "Gregory Thorne, Global Strategy Consultant." It had a personal cell number on it. Anya's mind was a whirlwind. Thorne was painting Blackwood as a villain. Was this anonymous charity just a prelude to some kind of trap? What could Blackwood possibly want from her that would require such an elaborate scheme? She knew calling Thorne was a risk. He was obviously playing his own angle. But he was also the only person willing to talk. She needed information, leverage. She went to a nearby coffee shop, took a deep breath, and dialed the number. Thorne answered on the first ring. "Anya Sharma, I was hoping you'd call. I assume you've had a meeting with the Ice Queen, Evelyn Reed." "How do you know about that?" Anya asked, her voice steady. "I know how Damien operates." Thorne said, his voice a slick, conspiratorial purr. He finds a person's weakness and he leverages it. He's offering you money for your sister, isn't he? An art grant. He makes you think he's a savior, but he's a devil, Anya. I worked for him for 15 years. I know. What do you want Mr. Thorne to help you? He said the lie so smooth it was almost believable. And to get a little justice for myself. Damien is obsessed with your family. It's about your father, David Sharma. Anya froze the coffee cup, trembling in her hand. My father? He's been dead for 10 years. What about him? Your father was a genius, Thorne said. He invented the core algorithm that Blackwood Consolidated is built on. The source of all of Damien's wealth, and Damien stole it. He bought the company your father worked for, took the tech and threw your father away like trash. Now he's old and consumed by guilt. This whole act, the test, the money. It's not for you, it's for him. He's trying to buy absolution. He'll set you up in some foundation, make you a poster child for his generosity, and use your father's story to launder his own reputation. You'll be a puppet, Anya. The words hit her like a physical blow. It was a plausible, ugly story. It explained the obsession, the secrecy, the overwhelming generosity. It painted Blackwood not as a benefactor, but as a user, just as he had been 30 years ago. What's your offer, Mr. Thorne? Anya asked, her voice cold. Simple, Thorne said. Don't take his deal. I've been documenting Damien's unethical business practices for years. Your story is the human element I need. We go to the press, the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times. Billionaires' empire built on stolen genius founder's daughter reveals all. It's a massive story. It would cripple him. And for your cooperation, I'll give you a finder's fee from my own accounts. Let's say $10 million. Clean. More than he's offering, and you get to tell the truth instead of being his pet project. $10 million. It was a staggering, life-altering number, and all she had to do was destroy Damien Blackwood. She thought about it. The rage she felt on Blackwood's behalf was real. He had wronged her father. He had built a $50 billion Emma on her family's stolen legacy. Thorne was offering her revenge and a fortune besides. But something felt off. Thorne's story was too neat, his motives too transparently selfish. He didn't care about justice for her father. He cared about revenge for his demotion. He wanted to use her story as a weapon, just as he claimed Blackwood did. She would be trading one puppet master for another. And then she remembered the note. The artist who fixed the finial. Blackwood hadn't thrown it away. He had read it. He had responded. A man trying to simply buy absolution wouldn't have bothered with such an intricate personal test. He could have just had a lawyer cut a check. He was looking for something more than just an heir to give money to. He was testing for character, her father's character. Anya saw the whole board. Blackwood, the guilty king. Thor, the vengeful knight. And she, the pawn they were both trying to move. It was time for the pawn to make her own move. Okay, Mr. Thorne. Anya said, her voice sounding surprisingly convincing even to her own ears. I'm interested, but I need proof. Something concrete about my father's work being stolen. Thorne took the bait. Of course. I have copies of the original code design documents from the acquisition. I'll email them to you. You'll see. It's all there in black and white. Send it, Anya said, and we'll talk again. She hung up. 20 minutes later, an email arrived from a secure server. It contained scanned documents, schematics, and lines of code. She didn't understand all of it, but she recognized her father's neat, precise handwriting on the margins of several pages. It was real. Thorne had given her the weapon. But she wasn't going to use it on Damien Blackwood. She was going to use it to get her meeting. She forwarded the entire email to one person, Evelyn Reed. She added a short, simple message in the body. Reed, it seems your client is not the only one with an interest in my family's history. Mr. Thorne has been very forthcoming. He has offered me $10 million to take this story to the press. My original condition stands. I want a meeting with your client, face to face. Now he has a reason to agree. This is not a threat. It is a request for the truth. Anya Sharma. She hit send. She had played her hand. The king was in check. Now she would see if he would come out from behind his walls. The response came less than an hour later, a call from a blocked number. It was him. You have your meeting. Damien Blackwood said, his voice a low gravel. My car will be there in 1 hour. The car didn't take her to an office. It sped north along the Hudson River, arriving at a stunning house of glass and steel perched on a cliffside. Blackwood was waiting for her on a stone terrace, looking older and more tired than he had in the restaurant. I want the truth, Anya said, foregoing any pleasantries. He met her gaze, his own filled with a deep, ancient regret. The truth is that Gregory Thorne told you a part of it. He began, his voice heavy. I built my empire on the genius of your father, David Sharma. It was a moral theft, and it is the great regret of my life. I wanted to make amends, but I couldn't simply give you money. My shame wouldn't allow it. He continued the words, a confession, decades in the making. The test, the finial, the $1 tip. It was a cruel, selfish attempt to see if your father's greatest quality had survived in you. His grace under pressure, his integrity. I needed to know if you were his daughter in spirit, not just in blood. Your note was the answer. You didn't just pass my test, Anya. You showed me a character I thought no longer existed. He led her from the terrace inside, bypassing the opulent living areas and opening a set of tall double doors. The room beyond was an artist's dream. A massive, light-filled studio, complete with blocks of marble sculpting tools and a soaring glass wall overlooking the river. This isn't a handout, Blackwood said softly. It is a restoration. I stole your father's legacy, and in doing so I stole your time, your focus, your chance to create. I am giving it back. He explained it all. A permanent, unconditional trust was already established to cover all of Nina's medical needs for life. That is a debt repaid, he stated. But this, he gestured to the incredible studio, this is for you. I have established the David Sharma Foundation for Emerging Artists with an initial endowment of $500 million. Its mission is to fund artists who have faced hardship. You will be its first grant recipient, and when you are ready, you will have a permanent seat on its board. You will not be my project. You will be the one who finds and supports others like you. Anya walked into the center of the room, tears finally streaming down her face. It was not a feeling of wealth, but of release. The crushing weight she had carried for years was simply gone. He hadn't just given her money. He had given her back her purpose, her soul. Her life was forever changed, not by the insult of a $1 tip, but by the strength of her response to it. She had met cruelty with grace and unlocked not a fortune, but a destiny. In the quiet of the studio, with the river flowing endlessly below Anya Sharma, The artist picked up a chisel. It felt like coming home. Anya's story teaches us a powerful lesson about the world we live in. It's a reminder that our circumstances don't define us, but our reactions to them do. She could have responded with anger, with despair, and no one would have blamed her. But instead, she chose dignity. She chose grace. She chose to see value where someone else saw none. That single powerful choice didn't just change her life. It redeemed a past she never knew existed and built a future that will help countless others. Her story is a testament to the fact that true strength isn't about the power you have, but about the character you show when you have none. It proves that sometimes the smallest gestures can have the most profound consequences. If Anya's incredible journey from a struggling waitress to a life of purpose moved you, please give this video a like and share it with someone who might need to hear this message. And for more true stories that inspire and make you think, make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell. What is the kindest act you've ever seen in response to a negative situation? Let us know in the comments below.